Hey everyone, I'm Peter Stories here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now settle in, get cozy, and let yourself relax. My name is Andrew, and I saw Sarah for the last time 3 meters ahead of me on the trail before she simply vanished. It was October 15th, 2018, and I'd been a forest ranger at Olympic National Park for exactly 4 months and 12 days. Not that I was counting or anything, but when you're the rookie, every day feels like a test you might fail. Sarah Mitchell was a 23-year-old hiking enthusiast from Seattle who'd gotten separated from her group on the Hoh River Trail. I'd been assigned to escort her back to the main trailhead. Routine stuff, or so I thought. "Just stay close," I called ahead to her, adjusting the weight of my pack. The Motorola XTN 600 radio crackled with static against my hip, and I checked my Garmin eTrex GPS for the 100th time. 47 degree 51 35.2 N, 123 degree 52 12.8 W. We were right on track. The afternoon sun filtered through the massive Douglas firs, creating that cathedral lighting that made tourists fall in love with the Pacific Northwest. Sarah was chattering about her photography blog, something about capturing the authentic wilderness experience. She had that enthusiasm that city people get when they think they're having an adventure. Her red North Face jacket made her easy to track as she picked her way over the moss-covered logs that crossed the trail every few yards. "How much further?" she called back, stopping to take another photo of the old-growth forest. "About 2 miles to the junction, then another mile to..." I looked up from my GPS and she was gone. Not turned a corner gone. Not ducked behind a tree gone. Gone. I was staring at empty trail where 3 seconds ago there had been a woman in a bright red jacket taking photos. My heart started hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. "Sarah?" My voice cracked like a teenager's. "Sarah!" I sprinted to where she'd been standing, my Danner Mountain Light boots slipping on the wet Douglas fir needles. There were her footprints in the mud, clear as day, and then nothing. Like she'd been lifted straight up into the canopy. I keyed my radio with shaking fingers. "Dispatch, this is Unit 23. I have a missing person situation on Hoh River Trail, GPS coordinates 47 degree 51 35.2 N, 123 degree 52 12.8 W. Female hiker, red jacket, just disappeared. Static. Then Carol's voice from the ranger station. "Unit 23, say again. Did you say disappeared?" "Affirmative. She was right in front of me, and now she's gone. Requesting backup and search team." "Copy that, Andrew. Stay put, we're sending..." The radio cut to white noise. I tried again. Nothing. I pulled out my iPhone. Full bars, but calls wouldn't connect. The screen showed 3:47 p.m., which seemed wrong. Hadn't it been almost 4:30 when Sarah vanished? The woods had gone quiet, not peaceful quiet, wrong quiet. No bird calls, no squirrel chatter, no whisper of wind through the branches. Even the ever-present drip of moisture from the canopy had stopped. It was like someone had pressed a mute button on the entire forest. I started following the trail in the direction we'd been heading, calling Sarah's name every few steps. My voice sounded flat and dead in the unnatural silence. The GPS still showed our planned route, but something felt off about the landmarks. That particular arrangement of 3 lightning-struck snags should have been behind us by now, not ahead. After what felt like 20 minutes of hiking, I checked my phone again. Still 3:47 p.m. That's when the real fear started creeping in, cold and oily in my stomach. In ranger training, they tell you about the tricks the wilderness can play on your mind, how panic can make you disoriented, how stress can distort your perception of time. But this felt different. This felt like the forest itself was wrong. I kept walking, because what else could I do? Sarah was out here somewhere. Maybe she'd fallen into a ravine I couldn't see. Maybe she'd taken a side trail I'd missed. I was responsible for her safety, and I'd already screwed up once by losing her. The trail curved around a massive western red cedar, its trunk so wide it would take 6 people holding hands to encircle it. I remembered this tree from the way in. It was distinctive because someone had carved initials into the bark decades ago, now swollen and distorted by growth. RM plus LK, 1987, in heart shape about 8 feet up the trunk. Except as I passed it, I could swear the initials looked different, deeper, fresher. Another quarter mile, and I saw the 3 lightning-struck snags again, the exact same arrangement, from the exact same angle. Same dead woodpecker holes, same pattern of char on the bark. I stopped dead, my breath coming in short, sharp pants. I pulled out my GPS and stared at the screen until my eyes burned. According to the satellite readout, I was still at 47°51'35 and 123°52'12.8 the exact same coordinates where Sarah had disappeared. But I'd been walking for at least an hour. "Okay," I said aloud, just to hear a human voice, even if it was my own. "Okay, you're just turned around. Happens to everybody, even rangers." Except it didn't happen to rangers. Not on a trail they'd hiked a dozen times. Not on a trail with only one path. I turned around and started hiking back the way I'd come, walking fast enough that sweat beaded on my forehead despite the October chill. The same landmarks scrolled by in reverse order. The fallen log with the perfect sitting height notch, the boulder split clean in half by some ancient frost, the cluster of young alders growing in a perfect circle around a long dead stump. And then, impossible as a broken law of physics, there was the massive cedar with the heart-carved initials. RM plus LK, 1987. I was walking in a circle, on a straight trail, in a national forest where I'd been working for 4 months. My radio crackled to life. "Unit 23, this is dispatch, what's your status?" I nearly sobbed with relief. "Carol, Jesus, I've been trying to reach you, I think I'm lost. GPS is malfunctioning and I can't find the missing hiker. Andrew, you've been radio silent for 3 hours, what's your current position?" 3 hours? I looked at my phone. 3:47 p.m. Same as before. Same as always. I'm at the coordinates I gave you earlier, the cedar tree with the carved initials. But Carol, something's wrong. I keep passing the same landmarks over and over. Long pause. Static. Then, "Andrew, there is no cedar tree with carved initials on the Hoh River Trail." The words hit me like ice water. "What? Of course there is. I'm standing right next to it." "Negative. I've hiked that trail hundreds of times. Can you describe your exact surroundings?" I looked around, really looked, for the first time since this nightmare started. The forest was wrong. Not obviously wrong, but wrong in 1,000 subtle ways that my ranger training should have caught immediately. The moss on the trees grew in patterns that defied the prevailing winds. The understory plants were species that didn't belong together, like someone had mixed up ecosystems from across the continent. And the silence, God, the silence was like being wrapped in cotton. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Andrew's situation? Comment below. "Carol," I whispered into the radio, "I think I'm in serious trouble." But the radio had gone dead again. I started jogging, then running, panic overtaking whatever professionalism I had left. The trail blurred past in a smear of green and brown, my pack bouncing against my back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I had to find the end of this loop, had to find where the trail connected back to reality. But every landmark repeated. The cedar, the snags, the split boulder, the fallen log. Over and over and over, like a glitched video game or a broken record. That's when I saw him. He was standing in the trail ahead, maybe 50 yards out, and at first I thought it was another hiker. Tall, wearing what looked like an old-style ranger uniform, the kind they used in the 70s and 80s, with the wide-brimmed campaign hat and forest green wool shirt. He wasn't moving, just standing there with his back to me. "Hey," I called out, slowing to a walk. "Hey, are you okay?" He didn't respond. As I got closer, I could see his uniform was faded and patched like he'd been wearing it for decades. His hair, what I could see under the hat, was shot through with gray. "Sir, "I'm Ranger Thompson. Are you lost?" When I was about 20 feet away, he turned around. His face was wrong. Not deformed or monstrous, just wrong, like a photograph that had been left in the sun too long. His features were blurred, indistinct, and his eyes were the flat gray of overcast sky without pupils or iris or any sign of life. But worse than his face was his badge. Tarnished and green with age, it read, R. Martinez, U.S. Forest Service. RM. The initials on the cedar tree. "You're walking my trail," he said, and his voice was the sound wind makes through dead leaves. I backed away, every instinct screaming at me to run. But he continued talking, and his words felt like they were coming from inside my own head. 31 years I've been walking this trail. 31 years since I got lost looking for that missing family, the Kowalskis. Never found them. Never found my way out. But I keep walking, because that's what a ranger does. We never stop looking. L.K. Lisa Kowalski. "The trail keeps you," he said, taking a step toward me. "Once you're lost, truly lost, it never lets you go. You become part of it, part of the search that never ends." I turned and ran. Behind me, I heard him call out, "You'll understand soon, Andrew. The trail provides its own purpose, its own company. You'll never be alone again." I ran until my lungs burned and my legs shook, but the landmarks never changed. The cedar, the snags, the boulder, the log. An endless loop in a forest that shouldn't exist, walked by a dead ranger who'd been looking for missing people since before I was born. My phone still read 3:47 p.m., the exact moment Sarah had disappeared, and that's when I understood. Sarah hadn't vanished into thin air. She'd been taken by the trail just like the Kowalski family 31 years ago. Just like Ranger Martinez. Just like me. I'm still walking. The sun never sets and my watch never moves, but I can feel time passing in the ache of my feet and the growing emptiness in my water bottle. Sometimes I see other figures in the distance, hikers in modern gear, park visitors in clothes from decades past. All of us walking the same endless loop, searching for people we'll never find. My girlfriend Emma stopped texting after the first day, or maybe the first hour. Time doesn't work right here. The last message I got was, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Made your favorite dinner." I'll never taste her lasagna again. I'll never keep any of the promises I made. But I keep walking, because that's what rangers do. We never stop searching, even when the search becomes eternal. Even when we become the very thing that traps others. And sometimes, late in the whatever passes for night here, I hear Sarah calling my name from somewhere up ahead on the trail. Always just out of sight. Always just around the next bend. I follow her voice because maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time I'll find her, save her, redeem myself for failing her in the first place. But deep down, I know the truth. Sarah isn't calling for rescue. She's calling for company. The trail is lonely when you walk it forever, and the trail always needs more rangers. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Sarah. I read every single one. What would you do if you found yourself trapped on an endless trail? Share your survival strategy below. My name is Joshua Martinez, and I've been a forest ranger at Sequoia National Park for 17 years. I've pulled bodies from ravines, guided lost hikers through blizzards, and faced down charging bears with nothing but bear spray and steady nerves. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened to Sarah Chen on October 13, 2018, at 2:47 p.m. on the Morro Rock Trail. I can still see her auburn ponytail bouncing 3 meters ahead of me as she documented the unusual fungal growth we discovered near grid coordinates 36.5647 degree N, 118.7636 degree W. Sarah was a mycologist from UC Berkeley, contracted by the Park Service to investigate the strange white clusters that had been killing Douglas firs in Section 4 Alpha. Sweet kid, 26 years old, reminded me of my daughter Emma with her boundless curiosity and infectious laugh. "Joshua, look at this specimen," she called over her shoulder, her voice bright with excitement. "The mycelial network is unlike anything I've cataloged before." I was checking my Garmin eTrex 20X, noting our elevation at 6,725 feet, when I heard her camera click one final time. The forest went dead silent. Not the comfortable quiet of wilderness, but the suffocating silence that makes your skin crawl. Even the Stellar's jays stopped their constant chatter. "Sarah?" I looked up from my GPS unit. She was gone. Just gone. The trail stretched empty ahead of me, her last footprint still visible in the soft earth where she'd knelt to photograph the fungus. Her sample kit lay open, test tubes scattered, her Nikon D750 face down in the dirt with the lens cap rolling in a slow circle. My heart hammered against my ribs as I keyed my Motorola radio. "Unit 23 to dispatch. I have a code yellow at coordinates 36.5647 north, 118.7636 west. Requesting immediate assistance." "Copy, Unit 23. What's the nature of your code yellow?" My throat felt like sandpaper. Mycologist Sarah Chen has disappeared from the trail. Last seen at 14:47 hours. That was 6 hours ago. The sun now hung low behind the towering sequoias, painting everything in shades of amber and shadow. My LED headlamp cut through the gathering darkness as I followed the search grid pattern, each step echoing hollowly in the unnatural quiet. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife Maria. "Dinner's ready. Emma scored 2 goals at soccer practice. She can't wait to tell you. Love you." Guilt twisted in my chest. I'd promised to be home by 7 for Emma's celebratory pancakes. The photo Maria had sent showed our 8-year-old daughter grinning ear to ear, grass stains on her uniform, holding up 2 fingers in victory. My wedding ring felt heavy on my finger as I typed back. "Still searching. Tell Emma Daddy's proud. Save me some pancakes." "Sarah!" I called out, my voice swallowed by the oppressive darkness between the ancient trees. "Can you hear me?" The silence stretched until my ears rang with it. Then, faint but unmistakable, I heard my daughter's voice drift from deeper in the forest. "Daddy, Daddy, I'm scared. Help me." My blood turned to ice. Emma was safely at home with Maria, 43 miles away in 3 Rivers, but that was definitely her voice, the slight lisp she still had with her S's, the way she drew out Daddy when she was frightened. "Emma?" The word escaped my lips as a whisper. "Daddy, please. It's dark, and I can't find my way." Every rational part of my mind screamed that this was impossible. Emma was home. I'd just gotten her text about soccer practice, but 17 years of emergency response had trained my body to react to a child in distress, and my legs were already carrying me toward the sound. The voice led me off the established trail, deeper into the old-growth forest where the massive sequoias blocked out the last traces of daylight. My headlamp beam danced wildly as I stumbled over exposed roots and fallen branches, my breathing coming in sharp gasps. "Keep calling, sweetheart. Daddy's coming." "I'm here, Daddy. I'm right here." But as I moved toward the voice, it seemed to shift, always staying just beyond the reach of my light. My hands shook as I fumbled for my radio, muscle memory guiding me through the protocol even as my mind reeled. "Unit 23 to dispatch. I'm hearing voices in Sector 4 Alpha. Possible additional missing person." Static crackled back. "Unit 23, clarify. Are you saying you've located Sarah Chen?" "Negative, dispatch. I'm hearing my daughter's voice, but that's impossible. She's at home with my wife." Long pause. "Unit 23, are you requesting medical assistance?" The question hit like a slap. They thought I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. But then Emma's voice came again, closer now, so real I could almost feel her small hand slipping into mine. "Daddy, I found something scary. There are people here, but they won't wake up." My skin erupted in goosebumps. "Sarah. Oh God, what if somehow Emma had wandered into the park? What if she'd found Sarah?" "Where are you, baby? Daddy's looking for you." "Up here, Daddy, in the big tree." I tilted my head back, my headlamp illuminating the massive trunk of a giant sequoia that had to be over 2,000 years old. About 30 feet up, something pale and irregular hung from the branches like oversized cocoons. My stomach lurched as I realized what I was looking at. Bodies, human-shaped bundles wrapped in what looked like organic webbing, suspended from the ancient branches like grotesque Christmas ornaments. They swayed slightly in the wind, and even from this distance I could see they were still breathing. "Jesus Christ," I whispered, fumbling for my radio with trembling hands. "Daddy? Why aren't you coming to get me?" The voice was coming from above now, from the direction of those horrible cocoons, but it was still Emma's voice, still carrying that note of hurt confusion that made my heart break every time she scraped her knee or had a nightmare. I pressed my back against the rough bark of the sequoia, hyperventilating. This couldn't be real. Emma was at home. Those things in the tree couldn't be talking. But then I heard Sarah's voice, weak and frightened. "Joshua, Joshua, is that you? I can't move. Something's wrong with me." Oscar, one of the cocoons, was moving more than the others, and I could make out Sarah's face through the translucent organic membrane. Her eyes were open, terrified, pleading. Then my wife's voice drifted down from another cocoon. "Joshua, you left us. You promised you'd be home for dinner and you left us." "No," I whispered, shaking my head violently. "No, no, no. Maria's at home. She's safe." "You always choose work over family," came my mother's voice from a third cocoon, even though she'd been dead for 5 years. "Just like your father. No wonder Emma doesn't respect you." The voices multiplied, overlapping, creating a chorus of accusation and pain from every person I'd ever loved or failed. My father, disappointed in my career choice. My brother, still bitter about the fishing trip I'd missed for his birthday. Emma, crying because Daddy wasn't there for her school play. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Joshua's situation? Comment below. I collapsed to my knees, my hands pressed against my ears, but the voices penetrated straight into my brain. They weren't coming through my ears anymore. They were inside my head, each one perfectly mimicked, each one carrying the exact emotional weight that would destroy me. "I thought you were brave, Daddy," Emma's voice whispered, sadder now. "But you're just a coward who runs away when people need him." That's when I saw it moving between the trees, a shadow that wasn't quite human, shifting and flowing like smoke given form. Occasionally I caught glimpses of something pale and elongated, with too many joints in its limbs, and a face that was nothing but a gaping mouth filled with rows of needle teeth. The voice imitator. It had been watching me, studying me, learning the voices that would break me most completely, and now it was feeding off my psychological destruction, growing stronger with every sob that tore from my chest. My radio crackled to life. "Unit 23, this is Chief Ranger Davidson. We've got your GPS coordinates. Team Alpha is en route to your position. Hold your ground and maintain radio contact." But the voice coming from my radio wasn't Chief Davidson's. It was my own voice, confident and reassuring, speaking the words I desperately needed to hear. The creature was even imitating me now, trying to make me trust the very device that could save me. I hurled the radio away from me, watching it shatter against a tree trunk. In the sudden silence that followed, I could hear something else. The sound of Sarah actually whimpering from her cocoon, not speaking in perfect sentences, but making the confused, frightened sounds of someone fighting off sedation. The real Sarah. I forced myself to stand, my legs wobbling like a newborn deer. My hands found my emergency kit, fingers closing around the rescue knife that had saved 3 lives over my career. The creature was still out there, still speaking in the voices of my family, but I focused on the sound of Sarah's actual breathing, her real distress. "I'm coming, Sarah," I whispered, and began to climb. The ancient sequoia's bark provided good handholds, and my 17 years of search and rescue training took over despite my terror. 20 feet, 25. 30 feet up, I reached the first cocoon, Up close, the organic webbing looked like solidified mucus mixed with some kind of plant fibers. It pulsed with a faint bioluminescence, and I could see veins running through it like a placenta. Sarah's face was visible through a thin membrane, her eyes tracking my movement. "It's okay," I told her, though my voice shook. "I'm getting you out of here." My knife sliced through the outer layer easily, releasing a smell like rotting flowers and copper. Sarah gasped as I peeled the membrane away from her face. "Joshua," she whispered, her voice hoarse and real, not the perfect imitation I'd been hearing. "There's something in the trees. It sounds like people I know, but it's not them. I know. We're going to get you down from here." But as I worked to free her arms, the creature's voices started again, more urgent now, angry at having its feeding session interrupted. "Joshua, what are you doing?" Maria's voice sharp with betrayal. "You're supposed to come home to us." "Daddy, why are you helping her instead of me?" Emma sobbing now. "Don't you love me anymore?" I kept cutting, even as tears streamed down my face. "You're not real," I said through gritted teeth. "My family is safe at home." "Are they?" The voice changed, became something cold and inhuman. "How do you know I haven't visited them already? How do you know the Emma who texted you about soccer practice was really Emma?" My hands froze on the knife. The text, the photo. Had Emma's smile looked a little too perfect? A little too wide? "That's right," the creature hissed, its voice now a horrible amalgamation of everyone I loved. "Doubt, fear. That's what I feed on. And you're so deliciously full of both." Sarah grabbed my wrist with her newly freed hand. "Joshua, look at me. Focus on my voice, not its voice. Your family is safe. I've been conscious this whole time. I heard you talking to dispatch. I heard your real radio conversations. That thing can't imitate radio frequencies. It can only mimic voices it's heard before." She was right. The thing had used Chief Davidson's voice but hadn't mimicked the radio's specific crackle and tone. It was feeding off the voices it had heard me call out, the emotional connections it had observed. "Help me get the others down," Sarah urged. "It's weaker when we don't feed its psychological games." Together we began freeing the other cocoons, an elderly hiker named Frank who'd been reported missing 3 weeks ago, a young couple from Fresno who'd vanished on their honeymoon. Others, too many others, some barely alive after weeks of whatever the creature had been doing to them. With each person we freed, the voice imitator's screams grew more frantic, less human. The shadows between the trees writhed and twisted, but it didn't approach directly. It was a psychological predator, not a physical one. Without the fear and despair feeding it, it was just another forest creature trying to survive. As the real rescue team's voices finally reached us, actual human voices with actual radio static, the creature let out one final inhuman shriek and dissolved into the darkness between the sequoias. Dawn was breaking as the helicopter lifted Sarah and the other survivors out of the forest. I gave my report to Chief Davidson, though I stuck to the facts about finding the victims and left out the supernatural elements. Some things you keep to yourself in this job. My phone buzzed with a video message from Maria, Emma at the breakfast table, syrup on her face, waving at the camera. "Hi, Daddy. Mommy says you saved someone important last night. I saved you pancakes, but Buster ate them. Sorry. Real. Spontaneous. Perfectly imperfect." I called home as the helicopter disappeared over the ridge. "Joshua?" Maria's voice with that little catch she got when she was worried. "Are you okay? You sound shaken." "I'm okay," I said, and for the first time in hours I meant it. "I'll be home soon. Tell Emma I love her." "I will. She's been worried about you all night. We both have." "Maria?" I hesitated, then pushed forward. "I need you to know. If you ever hear my voice calling you into the woods if I'm supposed to be somewhere else, don't trust it, promise me." Long pause. "Joshua, what happened out there?" "Just promise me." "I promise. Come home safe." 3 months later, I transferred to a desk job at park headquarters. Some people say I couldn't handle the field work anymore. that finding those survivors in such a traumatic state broke something in me. They're not wrong, but they don't understand what really broke. It wasn't finding the cocoons or the psychological torture. It was the moment I realized that the voice I trust most, my own, could be turned against the people I love. Sarah sends me research updates sometimes. She's studying the fungal network we found that day, the one that seemed to connect all the trees in that section of forest. She thinks the voice imitator might be some kind of symbiotic organism, something that's been living in the root systems of the ancient sequoias for thousands of years, feeding off the fear of lost travelers. I don't ask for details. Some knowledge is too dangerous to carry. But sometimes late at night when the wind is high and the trees are creaking, I hear Emma's voice calling for me from the darkness outside our house, and I have to go check her room, just to make sure she's still tucked safely in her bed dreaming innocent dreams. She always is. But someday, she might not be, and I'll never be able to trust my own ears to tell me the difference. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Sarah. I read every single one. My name is Andrew, and I should have forgotten the case of Lauren, but something brought me back to that cursed forest. It had been 8 months since Lauren Mackenzie disappeared without a trace from the Cascade Mountain trails. 8 months of sleepless nights, of her mother's desperate voicemails echoing in my head, of staring at that last photo on my desk. Lauren's bright smile at the trailhead, backpack loaded for what should have been a routine 3-day solo hike in October 2018. I'd been a ranger for 15 years, seen bodies mangled by bears, watched hypothermia turn strong men into corpses, pulled climbers off cliff faces in pieces. Nothing in nature scared me anymore. But Lauren Mackenzie, she haunted me in ways no grizzly ever could. The call came in at 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. My wife Sarah was still asleep next to me, her auburn hair spread across the pillow like autumn leaves. I should have let it ring. Ranger Station 7, this is Andrew. Andrew, it's Detective Morrison. We found something. My blood turned to ice water. In 8 months, we'd found nothing. No torn clothing, no equipment, no body. Lauren had simply vanished between mile marker 12 and 13 on the Whitewater Trail, like the forest had swallowed her whole. What kind of something? Her GPS watch. Hiker found it yesterday, half buried near Devil's Backbone Ridge. Still has battery, Andrew. Still recording. Devil's Backbone Ridge. That godforsaken stretch of trail where the old-timers claimed weird shit happened. Where even the most experienced locals avoided camping overnight. I'd always written off their superstitions as backwoods nonsense, but now... I'll be there in 20. Sarah stirred as I pulled on my uniform, the same olive green pants and khaki shirt I'd worn to search for Lauren countless times before. The same steel-toed boots that had hiked every inch of these mountains. Another call? Her voice was thick with sleep and resignation. Yeah, baby, go back to sleep. She knew better than to ask if it was about Lauren. It was always about Lauren. The drive to Devil's Backbone took 45 minutes through winding mountain roads. My Ford Ranger's headlights cut through the pre-dawn darkness, illuminating the same pine trees and granite outcroppings I'd memorized during the original search. Every mile marker felt like a countdown to hell. Detective Morrison was waiting at the trailhead parking lot, his breath visible in the crisp mountain air. October mornings in the Cascades could drop to 30 degrees, and today felt colder than usual. Where exactly did they find it? I asked, strapping on my duty belt loaded with radio GPS unit first aid kit and the Glock 19 I'd carried for 12 years without ever drawing. 300 yards up the ridge trail, buried under some loose rocks and pine needles, like someone tried to hide it. Or something, I thought, but didn't say. We hiked in silence, our boots crunching on frost-covered leaves. The forest felt wrong this morning. Too quiet, like even the birds knew to stay away. My radio crackled with morning check-ins from other rangers, but the familiar voices sounded distant and hollow. Here, Morrison said, pointing to a depression in the earth surrounded by yellow crime scene tape. Lauren's GPS watch lay in an evidence bag, its pink silicone band still bright against the dark soil. The digital display showed 3:42 p.m., October 15th, 2017, the exact time Lauren had vanished. "Battery shouldn't have lasted 8 months, Morrison muttered. I knelt beside the shallow hole, studying the disturbed earth. Something was off about the burial pattern. The rocks weren't placed randomly. They formed a rough circle around where the watch had been hidden. "Andrew," Morrison's voice was tight. "Look at this." He was staring at the watch's GPS log on his tablet. The tracking data showed Lauren's route for the first 2 days of her hike. Normal movement patterns, regular stops, everything you'd expect from an experienced solo hiker. Then at 3:42 p.m. on October 15th, the GPS showed something impossible. For 17 minutes, Lauren's position registered as moving in a perfect spiral pattern, each loop growing smaller and tighter, until the signal stopped dead center in a location that didn't exist on any map. According to the coordinates, Lauren's last known position was suspended 200 feet underground, directly beneath where we now stood. "Equipment malfunction," Morrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'd seen GPS glitches before. They showed up as scattered points, random jumps, straight lines to nowhere. They didn't show perfect geometric patterns that defied physics. "I'm going down there," I said, pointing toward the dense forest below the ridge. "Andrew, we've already searched." "Not well enough." The descent was treacherous, all loose shale and twisted roots waiting to snap an ankle. I'd made this exact climb during the original search, but today it felt different. The deeper I went, the more the forest seemed to close in around me. Pine branches caught at my jacket like grasping fingers. The air grew thick and oppressive, carrying the smell of decay and something else. Something wrong. My radio started acting up around the 50-yard mark. Static burst through every transmission until voices became unintelligible white noise. I tried raising Morrison, but got only electronic screaming in response. That's when I saw him. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Andrew's situation? Comment below. The homeless man was sitting against a massive Douglas fir, maybe 60 years old, wearing layers of filthy clothing that probably hadn't been washed in months. His beard was matted with pine needles and what looked like dried blood. But his eyes, Christ, his eyes were the clearest, most intelligent blue I'd ever seen. "Help me," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the wind. "Please, I'm hurt bad." Every instinct I'd developed over 15 years in law enforcement told me to approach with caution. Transients sometimes wandered into the backcountry, usually running from something or someone. But this guy was deep in terrain that would challenge experienced hikers. "What's your name, sir?" I called out, keeping 20 feet distance. Tom Bradley. I've been lost for days. Haven't eaten since Sunday, I think." His left leg was bent at an unnatural angle beneath him. A compound fracture by the look of it, with bone protruding through torn denim. The injury should have been agony, but Tom's expression was almost serene. "How did you get way out here, Tom?" I don't remember. Was walking the road, then I was here. Legs busted real bad. You got any food? Water? I should have called for medical evacuation immediately. Should have followed protocol and maintained safe distance until backup arrived. But something about Tom Bradley pulled at me. Maybe it was 8 months of failing to save Lauren, or the desperate need to save someone, anyone. I approached slowly, unclipping my water bottle and energy bars. "Medical's going to take a while to reach us, Tom. I'm going to stabilize that leg and get you some calories." As I knelt beside him, Tom's smell hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just unwashed human and infected wound. There was something underneath, something that made my stomach clench with primitive fear. Like roadkill left in summer heat, but worse. Older. "Bless you," Tom whispered as I handed him water. "Bless you for your kindness." The moment his fingers touched mine, cold shot up my arm like I'd grabbed a high-voltage wire. Not the clean cold of mountain air, but something deeper and more ancient. Tom's skin felt like wet leather, and his grip was far stronger than any injured homeless man should possess. I tried to pull back, but his fingers were locked around my wrist. "Tom, you need to let go." That's when he smiled. Tom Bradley's teeth were wrong, too sharp, too many, and black as charcoal between his gums. His eyes, those clear blue eyes that had seemed so human, began to change. The pupils dilated until only thin rings of color remained, and something else looked out at me, something that had never been human. "Your kindness," Tom said in a voice like breaking glass, "will be rewarded." The homeless man's grip tightened until I felt bones grinding together in my wrist. His broken leg began to straighten with wet popping sounds as the bone withdrew into his flesh. The serene expression melted away, revealing something underneath that had been wearing Tom Bradley like a badly fitting mask. His face elongated, jaw unhinging like a snake's to accommodate those nightmare teeth. The matted beard fell away in clumps, revealing skin that wasn't skin. It was gray and mottled and moving, shifting like it contained something alive beneath. I yanked backward with every ounce of strength I'd built, throwing hay bales and wrestling drunk hunters. But Tom Thing held me fast. His other hand shot out and grabbed my throat, and his fingernails had become claws that punched through skin like paper. Blood ran hot down my neck as I drew my sidearm and put 3 round center mass into Tom's chest. The .40 caliber hollow points that would drop a charging elk barely slowed him down. Dark ichor sprayed from the wounds, but they began closing immediately, the gray flesh knitting together like time-lapse footage. 15 years serving these mountains, Tom Thing hissed, his voice now a chorus of whispers. 15 years of pride and fearlessness. But you never met anything like me, did you, Andrew? How did it know my name? The demon, because that's what this was, no point pretending otherwise, released my throat and backhanded me across the face. It felt like being hit by a sledgehammer. I flew backward into a tree trunk and my vision exploded into white stars. Blood filled my mouth from where my teeth had cut the inside of my cheek. I rolled sideways just as Tom Thing's foot slammed into the ground where my head had been. The impact crater was 3 inches deep in packed earth. "She called for you," the demon said, advancing with movements that were almost human, but wrong in ways that made my brain hurt. "Lauren called your name when we took her. Andrew," she screamed. "Andrew, help me. But you weren't there, were you?" Rage exploded through my chest, burning away 15 years of professional calm. I lunged forward and drove my shoulder into the demon's midsection, carrying us both to the ground. We rolled through pine needles and granite dust, a tangle of human desperation and supernatural malice. The thing that had been Tom Bradley was stronger than me, faster than me, but I'd been fighting since I was 12 years old. I knew how to take punishment and keep swinging. I wrapped my hands around its throat and squeezed with everything I had. "Where is she?" I snarled through broken teeth. "Where's Lauren?" The demon's laugh was like fingernails on chalkboard. "Below, always below, where the roots drink deep and the darkness learns your name." It grabbed my wrists and pried my hands away from its throat like I was a child. Then it sat up and drove its fist into my stomach with enough force to lift me off the ground. I doubled over, retching, and the demon stood up. Its homeless man disguise was completely gone now, revealing something that might have been human once but had been twisted into a living nightmare. Gray skin hung in tatters from elongated limbs. Its face was a skull wrapped in leather with eye sockets that held dancing flames instead of pupils. "She's waiting for you, Andrew. Has been waiting for 8 months. Would you like to see her?" The demon reached down and grabbed my hair, yanking my head back so I had to look at it. Up close, its breath smelled like sulfur and rotting meat and something else. Something that reminded me of Lauren's perfume, sweet and floral and wrong. She's still alive, you know. Still conscious, still aware of every moment in the dark below. We keep them that way. It makes the feeding more satisfying. I spat blood in its face and reached for the backup knife clipped to my belt. The demon saw the movement and caught my wrist, but not before I managed to draw the blade. 4 inches of carbon steel that had gutted deer and carved kindling. I drove it into the demon's eye socket. Black ichor exploded across my face as the thing that had been Tom Bradley shrieked and released me. It staggered backward, clawing at the knife handle protruding from its skull. I didn't wait to see if it would regenerate from this wound. I ran. Behind me, the demon's scream rose to a pitch that made pine needles rain from the trees. Something crashed through the forest in pursuit, breaking branches like gunshots, but I didn't look back. I ran like I hadn't run since high school track, dodging trees and leaping over fallen logs, my lungs burning in the thin mountain air. My radio was squawking with Morrison's voice calling my name, but I couldn't make out words through the static and my own ragged breathing. The forest ahead lightened, the ridge trail, maybe 200 yards uphill. If I could reach Morrison, if I could get back up, maybe we could. Pain exploded across my back as the demon's claws raked through my uniform shirt and the flesh beneath. I stumbled forward, nearly going down, but managed to keep my feet. "You cannot run from what you are," the demon hissed from directly behind me. "You failed her once. You will fail her again." I dove sideways as the demon lunged, rolling behind a massive boulder. The thing's claws sparked against granite where my head had been. "Coward," it taunted, hiding like a child. Is this how the fearless ranger faces his demons? I was trapped. The boulder provided cover, but I couldn't stay here forever, and the demon was too fast for me to outrun on open ground. My backup ammunition was in my pack, which I'd dropped somewhere during the first attack. The knife was gone, buried in the demon's eye socket. That's when I remembered the flare gun. Standard issue for wilderness emergencies, loaded with a magnesium charge hot enough to start a signal fire in wet conditions. I'd never fired it at anything living, but desperate times. I pulled the flare gun from my belt and checked the load. One shot. Had to make it count. The demon's voice was getting closer, circling around the boulder. "She's waiting, Andrew, down in the dark where the roots grow thick. Would you like to hear her voice again?" Something that sounded like Lauren screamed my name from the demon's throat. Not a perfect imitation. There was something rotten underneath. Something that made it clear this thing had been feeding on her terror for 8 months. I stepped out from behind the boulder and put the flare directly into the demon's chest. The magnesium charge burned at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The demon's shriek shattered every window in my soul as supernatural flesh ignited like gasoline. It staggered backward, its entire torso engulfed in white-hot flame that wouldn't go out. "Below!" it screamed as it burned. "She waits below! Come to us, Andrew! Come and save her!" The demon collapsed in a pile of burning meat and bone, but its voice continued even as the flames consumed it. "Find the circle of stones. Follow the spiral down. She calls your name in the dark." Then there was only the crackle of supernatural fire and the smell of sulfur dissipating on the wind. I found Morrison 20 minutes later, frantically calling my name on his radio. He took one look at my shredded uniform and blood-covered face and immediately called for medical evacuation. "What the hell happened to you?" "I found something," I said, staring back into the forest. And it found me. The medevac helicopter arrived within the hour, but I refused transport. Instead, I had them bring every piece of ground-penetrating radar and excavation equipment in the county. If Lauren was below, if she was still alive after 8 months in whatever hell that demon had prepared for her, I was going to find her. We located the circle of stones just before sunset. 17 granite rocks arranged in a perfect spiral, exactly matching the GPS pattern from Lauren's watch. The ground-penetrating radar showed a cavity 30 feet underground, a natural cave system that didn't appear on any geological survey. "Andrew," Morrison said as we prepared the excavation, "you sure about this? After what happened to you today?" I looked at the photo of Lauren on my phone. That bright smile, that trusting face, those eyes that had haunted me for 8 months. "She's down there, Morrison, and she's waiting for me to bring her home." As the sun set behind the Cascade Peaks, we began to dig. In the distance, something that might have been wind or might have been voices whispered my name through the trees. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd faced my demon and emerged victorious. The real horror was just beginning. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Lauren. I read every single one. This is the story of Andrew, the fearless ranger who learned that some things in the forest fear nothing in return. But Lauren's rescue, that's a story for another dark night in the mountains. My name is John, and I saw Elizabeth for the last time 3 meters ahead of me on the trail before she simply disappeared. Not like she walked around a bend or ducked behind a tree. She was there. 22 years old, auburn ponytail swaying with each step of her hiking boots on the packed dirt of Devil's Canyon Trail. And then she wasn't. Like someone had hit delete on reality itself. That was 6 hours ago. 6 hours of me retracing every goddamn step, checking my GPS coordinates obsessively. 44.14.119 to Gurin, 121.7817 to W. The exact spot where physics stopped making sense, and my 15 years as a forest ranger became worthless. I should explain something about myself. The other rangers at Deschutes National Forest call me Encyclopedia John, behind my back. Not exactly a compliment. While they're sharing war stories and drinking Budweiser after shifts, I'm reading technical manuals and updating my trail condition spreadsheets. I know the Latin names for every tree species, can calculate elevation gain per mile in my head, and have memorized all the emergency protocols from the 847-page Ranger Operations Manual. My wife Sarah says my brain works like a computer. Everything has to compute, categorize, analyze. She's right. That's probably why I'm the guy they send when hikers get lost in the technical terrain, or when they need someone to interface with the GPS specialists and search and rescue coordinators. I might not be the most popular ranger, but I get results. Except today. Today my computer brain is running fatal error messages. The call came in at 06:30 hours. Elizabeth Morrison, age 22, university student from Portland, researching old-growth forest patterns for her forestry thesis. Last contact with her graduate advisor was yesterday at 1800 hours via cell phone from the Devil's Canyon trailhead. She'd told Professor Harris she was planning to hike to the old CCC shelter ruins to document tree ring samples. Routine missing hiker case. I'd handled dozens just like it. But Elizabeth's mother, Janet Morrison, was sobbing on the phone when she called the ranger station at dawn. She always checks in every few hours, Mrs. Morrison kept repeating. Always. She promised me after what happened to that girl in Olympic National Park last year. She promised. I assured Mrs. Morrison that Elizabeth was probably fine. Cell coverage is spotty in Devil's Canyon. Camping overnight is common for researchers. Morning would bring answers. Standard reassurances from the Ranger Operations Manual, Section 12.3, Managing Family Concerns. What I didn't mention was that Devil's Canyon has a reputation. The old-timers whisper about it when they think us younger rangers aren't listening. Stories that go back to the 1950s, when the Civilian Conservation Corps built the original shelter in that hollow. 3 construction workers disappeared during the project. Then in 1967, a local teacher named Maria Santos went missing on the same trail. Her car was found at the trailhead. Her camping gear was discovered scattered near mile marker 2.5, but Maria herself was never seen again. Since then, Devil's Canyon has claimed 17 people, 17 unexplained disappearances over 5 decades. The Park Service doesn't advertise that statistic. I've read every case file, analyzed the patterns, studied topographical maps until my eyes bled. My theory was always that Devil's Canyon's unique geography, steep terrain, underground cave systems, unreliable cell coverage, created a perfect storm for accidents that looked like mysteries. Keyword was, because at 12:47 hours today, I watched Elizabeth Morrison violate the fundamental laws of reality. I'd been following her trail for 3 hours. She was an experienced hiker. Her boot prints showed consistent pace, proper spacing, good trail discipline. No signs of distress or disorientation. I was actually impressed. Most college kids leave a trail like drunken elephants. The tracks led me past mile marker 2, where Maria Santos vanished in 67. and into the dense forest approaching the old shelter ruins. Ancient Douglas firs towered overhead, their canopy so thick that my watch read 12:45 hours, but it felt like twilight. The air smelled wrong. Not the usual pine and damp earth, but something metallic and sweet, like pennies left in honey. That should have been my first warning. My radio had been crackling with static for the past hour. My GPS unit, a military-grade Garmin GPS Map 66XS that's never failed me, started showing impossible readings. According to the screen, I was simultaneously at 3 different locations within a 50-yard radius. But I kept following Elizabeth's trail because that's what the manual says. Trust your training. Stay focused on the objective. Then I saw her. She was walking ahead of me on the trail exactly as her mother had described her. Auburn hair in a ponytail, blue North Face backpack, brown hiking boots. She was moving at a steady pace, pausing occasionally to examine trees, presumably taking her samples for the thesis research. I called out, "Elizabeth! Elizabeth Morrison." She didn't turn around. I increased my pace, closing the distance between us. 50 yards, 40, 30, 20. The metallic honey smell was getting stronger, making my stomach clench. My heart was beating too fast, and my peripheral vision kept catching movements in the forest that weren't there when I looked directly. "Elizabeth!" I called again, louder. This time she paused and started to turn around. That's when I saw it. Just for a split second in my peripheral vision, there was something else on the trail. A woman in a white dress. Not hiking clothes. An actual dress, long and old-fashioned. The kind you might see in century-old photographs. The dress was white, but stained with something dark across the chest and sleeves. But when I focused my eyes directly ahead, there was only Elizabeth in her hiking clothes turning to face me. Except Elizabeth's face was wrong. I can't explain how it was wrong. The features were correct. Brown eyes, narrow nose, the small scar on her left cheek that her mother had mentioned, but something in her expression was vacant, like looking at a photograph of a person instead of the person themselves. "Are you Elizabeth Morrison?" I asked, approaching carefully. She smiled. The smile was perfect. White teeth, slight dimple in her right cheek, exactly like the photo her mother had emailed to the station. But her eyes never changed. Empty brown eyes that looked through me rather than at me. "I've been waiting for you, John," she said. The words hit me like ice water. I'd never told her my name, and her voice was wrong, too deep with an odd accent I couldn't place. I reached for my radio, never breaking eye contact. "Unit 23 to base. I've located the missing hiker. Grid coordinates." I glanced at my GPS unit. The screen was blank. When I looked up, Elizabeth was gone, not walking away, not hidden behind a tree. Gone. Banished from the trail like she'd never been there. The forest went completely silent. No bird calls, no wind through the trees. Even the omnipresent buzz of insects stopped. The only sound was my own breathing and the hammer of my pulse in my ears. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, trying to process what I'd witnessed. My rational mind cycled through possibilities. Hallucination brought on by altitude and stress. Optical illusion caused by unusual lighting conditions. Misidentification of wildlife or shadow patterns. But my gut knew better. I approached the spot where Elizabeth had been standing. The trail showed her boot prints clearly impressed in the soft earth, until they simply stopped. Not like she'd stepped off the trail or changed direction. The prints ended mid-stride, as if she'd vanished in the middle of taking a step. That was 6 hours ago. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in John's situation? Comment below. Since then, I've called in search teams, aerial surveillance, K9 units. I've walked every inch of Devil's Canyon within a 2-mile radius. I've checked every cave system, every cliff face, every possible hiding spot. Elizabeth Morrison has disappeared as completely as if she never existed. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is what's been happening to me since sunset. It started with glimpses in my peripheral vision. a white dress between the trees, always just out of direct sight. Then came the whispers, a woman's voice calling my name from directions that didn't make sense. Sometimes ahead of me on the trail, sometimes behind, sometimes from above in the tree canopy. John, come find me, John. My radio keeps picking up transmissions that base station swears they're not sending. Static-filled voices that sound like Elizabeth asking for help, begging me to follow her voice deeper into the forest. But I've learned not to trust what I hear, because twice now, following those phantom radio calls has led me to the same place, mile marker 2.5, where Maria Santos disappeared in 1967. And each time I arrive there, I find something new. The first time, it was Elizabeth's blue North Face backpack, sitting in the center of the trail like it had been placed there deliberately. Inside was her research notebook, filled with detailed observations about old-growth tree patterns. The final entry was dated yesterday, 1745 hours. Fascinating bark scarring on Douglas fir approx. 200 years old. Pattern suggests historical trauma event. Local legends mention woman who died violently in this area. Trees seem to remember. The second time I returned to mile marker 2.5, the backpack was gone. In its place was a Polaroid photograph that looked decades old. A woman in a white dress standing among the same Douglas firs. The woman's face was blurred, but her pose was identical to how Elizabeth had been standing when I first saw her on the trail. On the back of the photograph, someone had written in faded ink, Maria Santos, 1967. She's still here. I should have left the forest then. Should have called for backup, returned to base, filed my report, and let someone else take over the case. But I can't leave. Not when Elizabeth is still out here somewhere. At least, I think it's still Elizabeth. The rational part of my brain, the computer that served me well for 15 years, keeps trying to explain what I'm experiencing. Sleep deprivation, hypothermia, carbon monoxide poisoning from a malfunctioning camp stove, psychological breakdown triggered by professional stress. But there are too many details that don't fit those explanations. Like the fact that my GPS coordinates keep changing even when I'm standing perfectly still, or that my digital camera captures images of things I didn't see when I took the photos. A woman in white standing behind trees, always positioned where she should be impossible to miss in person. Or that Elizabeth's trail, which I've been following all day, now leads to places that don't exist on any topographical map. The sun set an hour ago. My flashlight beam seems weaker than it should be, swallowed by darkness that feels thicker than normal night. The temperature has dropped 20 degrees since sunset, and my breath is visible despite the fact that this afternoon was warm for October. Most disturbing of all, I keep finding signs that other searchers have been through this area recently. Footprints that match the boots worn by my fellow rangers, broken branches at head height, even cigarette butts from the brand that Tony Martinez smokes. But when I radio base station, they tell me I'm the only searcher deployed in Devil's Canyon. They haven't sent anyone else, which means either base station is lying to me or I'm following the tracks of people who don't exist. I'm typing this report on my phone while sitting in the ruins of the old CCC shelter, Elizabeth's original destination. The stone foundation walls are still intact, but everything else has long since rotted away. It's the only place in Devil's Canyon where I can get a reliable cell signal. The shelter is also where I found the other photographs. Dozens of them, hidden in a rusted coffee can buried under the collapsed chimney stones. Polaroids and digital printouts spanning decades. Different people in different clothes from different eras, but all showing the same thing. A woman in a white dress standing among the Devil's Canyon trees. In some photos, she's alone. In others, she's standing behind hikers who are looking away from the camera, unaware of her presence. In the most recent photos, she's not standing behind the hikers anymore. She's standing in place of them. I found Elizabeth's university ID card in the same coffee can, along with cards belonging to 17 other people. 17 people who match the names on the unsolved disappearance cases from Devil's Canyon, including Maria Santos from 1967. Maria's driver's license photo looks exactly like Elizabeth. Same face, same expression, same empty brown eyes. I think I understand now what's been happening in Devil's Canyon for the past 50 years, and I think I understand why the disappearances always happen to people who come here alone. She takes their faces, their bodies, their identities, and she uses them to hunt for the next victim. The Elizabeth I saw on the trail this afternoon wasn't Elizabeth Morrison, forestry student from Portland. It was something else. Something that had been wearing Elizabeth's body like clothing, and now it's hunting for someone new. The whispers have been getting louder since full darkness fell. She's not trying to hide anymore. I can hear her moving through the forest around the shelter ruins, branches breaking under her feet. Sometimes she's calling my name in Elizabeth's voice. Sometimes she's using the voices of other missing hikers, voices I recognize from old recordings in the case files. John, please help me, John. I'm so cold, John. I can't find my way out, John. My phone battery is down to 15%. My flashlight is starting to dim, and I'm beginning to understand that I'm not going to make it out of Devil's Canyon alive. But maybe I can leave something behind for the next ranger who comes looking for me. If you're reading this, if you found my phone in these ruins, then you need to know. Devil's Canyon isn't just haunted. It's infected. There's something in these woods that feeds on human identity, that steals faces and voices and memories. It looks like the people it's taken, but it's not them. The real people, Elizabeth, Maria, all 17 victims, they're still here somewhere, still conscious, still trapped, still aware of what's been done to them. I can hear them now, underneath the false voices. The real Elizabeth crying for help in a voice so distant it sounds like it's coming from the bottom of a well. The temperature just dropped another 10 degrees. My breath is forming ice crystals in the beam of my flashlight. She's coming. I can see her now at the edge of the tree line. White dress, long dark hair, moving with fluid grace that looks beautiful until you notice she's not walking on the ground. She's floating 6 inches above the forest floor, and her feet never touch the earth. She's wearing Elizabeth's face, but I can see through the illusion now. Underneath the stolen features is something ancient and hungry and alien to everything human. "Hello, John," she says in Elizabeth's voice. "I've been waiting for you." Behind her, I can see the others, 17 figures in hiking clothes from different decades, all wearing the faces of the missing. But their eyes are her eyes now, empty and predatory and inhuman. She's building an army of the taken, and I'm going to be the 18th member. The last thing I want to say is this: I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry I won't be home for dinner tonight like I promised. I'm sorry I'll miss Emma's soccer game this weekend. I'm sorry that when they find someone wearing my face walking out of these woods tomorrow, it won't actually be me. And I'm sorry to whoever comes looking for me next. Don't believe whatever you see wearing my face. Don't trust whatever you hear speaking with my voice. The real John Brennan died in Devil's Canyon trying to save a girl who was already gone. Everything else is just the woman in white, adding another face to her collection. The battery on my phone is about to die. She's almost close enough to touch me now. I can smell that metallic honey scent that means reality is about to break again. But I want to tell you one more thing. Something that might be important. She can only take you if you're alone. Maria Santos was alone. Elizabeth Morrison was alone. I'm alone. All 17 victims were alone when they vanished. If someone else is with you, if you have a witness who can see the real you, she can't complete the theft. She can't steal what's being observed by others. That might be why she's been hunting for 50 years instead of simply taking everyone at once. She needs isolation. She needs... The screen is going black. My phone is dying. She's reaching for me now with hands that look like Elizabeth's but feel like ice and graveyard earth. I can hear the real Elizabeth screaming somewhere far away, trapped in whatever dimension houses the stolen. And now I'm going to join her. Don't come alone. Don't trust the faces. Don't believe what you see. The woman in white is hungry and Devil's Canyon has so many lonely trails. Phone battery died. Final GPS coordinates: 44, 4219 degree, 12178, 17 W. Mile marker 2.5, Devil's Canyon Trail, Deschutes National Forest. Phone found by Ranger Thomas Chen, October 15, 2019, 0800 hours. Ranger John Brennan still missing. Search ongoing. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Elizabeth. I read every single one.